He's John Timpane.
And he's Don Rooney.
And this is
The Musical Innertube.
Now, you may ask, why is this podcast called The Musical Innertube?
And we may reply, because that's its name, of course.
Now, how did this podcast get that name?
Back in college, we hosted a radio show. Once, we tried to introduce a soothing musical interlude.
Instead, we messed up and wound up introducing a soothing musical innertube, and the name stuck.
So here we are, hundreds of years later, still talking
to interesting people about their interesting lives.
Difference makers who really make a difference.
One of the people we love to talk to here on the Musical Innertube is Julie McKelvey. She is attempting to climb all 7 of the tallest peaks in the entire world. And so far, she's knocked off 4 of those peaks. And we're going to talk to her about her past experiences and what lies ahead in the future. Hi, Julie.
Hello. How are you?
Fine. I understand you're a little rough, though. I mean, it's you just climbed Denali, the tallest peak in North America, and it's a little tough coming back down.
Yeah, it is. When I talked to you guys last, I'd only made it to just shy of Camp 3, and it turns out that the rest of that mountain is really where the difficulty is. So I found that out firsthand, and incredibly beautiful, but super hard. And so yeah, the re-entry for me this time is it's just taking a little longer than normal.
If we could remind our listeners, is it true, is my memory correct, that you broke your foot or badly sprained it the first time up on Denali, and you kind of tried to keep going until your guide said, I don't think so. Is that pretty much what happened? Can you remind us?
Yeah, no, I fell. My last big training hike before I left up at Hawk Rock where I train, I was carrying a 70-pound pack, I think, and I slipped and I fell and I broke my foot, although I didn't know it was broken, nor did I go have it checked because I didn't really want to know. I thought it was just sprained, and so we tried to nurse it, me and the coaching team, and I went anyway and got up to where it was super steep and had not told my guide what happened, of course. And what's wrong with your ankle? And I'm like, what do you mean? And then, I had to tell him, and he made the call, which now that I've seen the upper mountain, that was definitely the right call. There's no way I would have been able to get up there. And then anyway, came home and had it x-rayed, and it was broken the whole time. So it was, devastating. But now after a year, I realized it was actually a good thing to happen to me. In hindsight, we all know what hindsight is, right? The problem is,
yes, it's 2020.
Clear,
You've also climbed Mount Vinson, which is the tallest mountain in Antarctica. So it's the tallest part of the lowest part of the planet. But your luck didn't hold out there either. You went up the side of that mountain injured, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, it's a theme, apparently, with me. It was the same thing. It was my last training hike, and I didn't have a heavy pack. I was almost to the car. I was almost done. And I slipped. I think it was on ice. It happened so fast, and I face planted directly, my mouth right into a rock with no reaction time. So my front teeth went all the way through my lip. My mouth was broken. But my mouth was broken, just all my teeth bashed in. And so, yeah, I quickly got to the dentist that night and a surgeon. And, I was leaving in 4 days, and they wired my teeth together and got me stitched up, and I still went, and which I can't believe, but I did. And saw doctors along the way, and Punta Arenas, Chile, and I saw people there, and I saw people in Antarctica, and had my stitches taken out while I was on the mountain by a dentist who happened to be my tent mate. I mean, it was like all these things started. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm supposed to keep doing this. So it was, it was super uncomfortable, and I had to go, do extra things to make sure my mouth was taken care of, and I couldn't eat that well, but I made it, and I'm so glad that I went because, I had put so much into it, and my whole attitude towards this whole thing is I'm just going to keep going until I can't, and if I can, I'll try it. If I can't, I'll stop. And So
did this all happen before you took on Denali?
This happened in December 20th, and I left for Vincent on the 23rd of December. And then I did Denali just in June of this year. So my mouth is still just, I don't know how many different surgeries and, mouth work I've had done, but it's still going on. So it'll probably be another 6 months of dental work till all that's fixed. But I'll have the most beautiful teeth in the world by the end of it. So,
I mean, you have Don and I just cringing in our chairs, just thinking about the amount of physical pain. I mean, you called it super uncomfortable, which is kind of like saying, well, my leg caught on fire and it was a diversion.
The good thing about Antarctica is it's so cold there that you're just numb anyway. So I didn't.
And now, when you get to Antarctica, how accessible is this mountain? Is it something that's way deep in the middle of it and you have to fly over ice for hours and hours, or is it somewhere near the edge? How is getting to Mount Vincent?
It's crazy. The whole thing. I always say each one's my favorite, and I'm going to say that about Vincent now because just the whole experience of getting in there. You leave from Punta Arenas, Chile, and you're on this special plane that can land on the blue ice runway, which is in Union Glacier, and so. They used to have it used to be this big Russian bomber plane that flew in, and now it's like a 757. But so you get on the plane, and you're on it's probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours anyway. And then 20 minutes before you land, they lower the temperature in the cabin to 20 degrees because when you get out, you're on the ice, in the middle of Antarctica. So they lower the temperature and you get all your warm gear on. And then you step out and it's crazy. It's so incredible. And there's this whole camp at Union Glacier. And so you're either people that go there are either going to climb up the mountain or visit penguins. Two very different types of people, obviously.
Right.
But they're big camp, Union Glacier. And they've got a whole setup there. That's this whole city of tents and camps, and they make meals, and there's a medical station, and the whole nine. And then you wait for your turn on the ski plane, and then the ski plane takes you into Vincent Beach, and that's where you start setting up the tents and start trekking up the mountain. So just amazingly beautiful, super cold, but just so many times I was just looking out over the vastness, and you don't see any footsteps. Nobody's been there. Just so few people have had the opportunity to stand on that continent and experience it. So I didn't see any.
You're making me realize what you just said a couple of minutes ago is that you make such a commitment just to get to the foot of the mountain and start climbing. I mean, all the things you had to do to get there that, well, for you, a little thing like a broken mouse wasn't going to stop you. I mean, commitment just to get that point, I could almost understand why. I mean, if I fell down and broke my mouth, people would have to wait on me for 2 years. I mean, but you had it stitched up and you went right ahead. I could see just the amount you had to travel just to get there. And you just said just now that very few people had ever been there except to climb up this amazing mountain.
Yeah, and there's only certain windows in the year that you can access these mountains. It's not like I could say, oh, let's just wait a month and go. I mean, the expeditions are planned, and you either make it or you wait till the next year,
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I wonder if Denali, obviously, and some of the other mountains that you've climbed are tall enough to have snow and ice at the peaks, and that's part of the danger. I would assume that one mountain down in Antarctica would be all ice. Was that the case? Was there a lot of ice climbing involved in this one?
There was not really. There was one section that was super steep, and you're on the fixed lines, and you're kicking your steps into the ice to get to the top. But that's I don't know. We were on that maybe 3 hours. And the rest in that, so that's pretty, and you have a really heavy pack on at that point because you're not. So we start just like with Denali, you start with a sled and a heavy pack, and then you ditch the sled at one of the middle camps, and then you're taking all the weight in your pack just because you can't take a sled up that steep ice on the fixed line. So it was heavy pack, and it was great Denali training. Looking back on that. But the rest of it it's hard snow. There's ice here and there, but there's not a huge amount of ice, believe it or not. It's mostly snow that you're walking around on. So, and December and January are the warmest months there. And it was minus 40 at the summit. I mean, it's intense that you actually feel hot. Like when we were going up those fixed lines and exerting all that energy, you're sweating, you're hot, but you're cold.
Imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, 40 below, and it sounds tropical for Antarctica. So you were saying it was good training for Denali, and again, this was your second trip to Denali because the foot kind of screwed up the first one.
Yeah.
So was it then very easy to make the first part of the climb because you've already done it before?
It was, yeah. I mean, the whole that almost all fell apart with. I had handpicked the guides that I did that. I did this one this year privately without a whole group of people. I just chose to do it differently. And so I had handpicked these guides, and one of them was the guy that brought me down from Denali last year. And so I got to know him. I went out to Montana. I trained with these guys. We were all set, a team of 3, small and mighty. And then the main guide did a first expedition up Denali early in the season and had to get evac'd off the mountain because of a major problem with his back. I still don't know what happened. He broke his back or something happened. And so I don't have a guide. And so my coach, my uphill athlete coach, that's the company I use, who I know really well, he guided up there for 15 years. And I've been begging him to go one more time to do Denali and take me up there. And he's been like, no, I'm done with that thing. And so we get wind of this a week before I'm supposed to leave, and he agrees to fly to Alaska and guide me up Denali, which I couldn't believe. But he lands in Alaska and he tests positive for COVID. So we're now the night before I'm supposed to leave. I'm in South. I land. I get this news. There's no guides. There's nobody to take me. And so it almost got called off. And then the owner of the company, Alaska Mountaineering School, who had just gotten off Denali, he only ever does one trip a season. He's gone up there 39 times. I mean, he's like the best up there. He agrees to take me up. He agrees to turn around, take me back up, which, so I kept going up the food chain. I mean, it kept falling apart, but like it kept getting better for me. So that's, I don't even know what your question was. Sorry. But that one almost fell apart. At that point, I'm really questioning, like, all right, God, like, am I not supposed to be doing that? Like, what is testing my like ability to push through difficulties or what? Because, it's like,
yes, just to get to the point where you're climbing. Yeah. You had told us last time, Julie, that Denali has a reputation of being the toughest of the mountains to climb, at least among some people who've done them all. And now having done it, do you understand where that reputation comes from? And can you explain to us what makes it so difficult to climb?
Yeah, I do understand, even though I haven't done Everest yet, so I don't really have a comparison. But yeah, I totally do. And to answer Don's earlier question, the beginning part was super easy. I mean, I was better trained going into Denali the second time than I was the first time. And because I was on a mission, like, I don't care what it takes, I'm getting to the top. I'm not doing it 3 times. And we were a small group, so we didn't have a huge amount of people. So we were able to move super fast, and we didn't do the cache days. So a lot of times what you do is you take your gear and supplies almost up to the next camp. Then you have to bury them in a hole, and then you put a wand in that marks, your name or your team name, so you know how to find it. And then you go back down to that camp to sleep. And in that process, you're acclimatizing. So we skipped all that, and we just kept going from one camp to the next with, I think, only like 1 or 2 rest days in there. And I was they were already acclimatized because they had been up there previously, this season. But I was not, but I was doing super well, and I was really taking care of myself and hydrating and eating well. And it was a lot easier for me this year than last year, the lower part. And then when we got to the upper part, there's the fixed lines, just like Vincent. It's not as long. So there's that part, and that was blue ice, and that part was challenging for sure. Mm-hmm. And then right when you get to the top of that is this ridge. It's called the 16K ridge, and I've seen pictures of this ridge and been dreaming about this thing for like a year. How beautiful it is up there. And we start to get up this ridge, and it looks nothing like the pictures that I saw, like in Iroquois. When I'm like, oh my God. And it's a 2-foot wide path, and it's a mixture of walking on ice with your crampons and rock climbing, which is not easy it's not easy with crampons, but it's not difficult. You know what I mean? But when you have crampons and you're on rocks, you're slipping off them and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, there's a 2-foot wide path, and on each side, there's drop-offs of thousands of feet. And you're at that point, there's a rope attached to the mountain, and you're clipping onto that rope. And in addition to that, I'm attached to my guide in front of me and my guide behind me. And so, safe, kind of. You're pretty safe. But the rule on the mountain, nobody, it's only one way. You can't have a group coming down and a group going up. There's not enough room. And so at one point we were on this kind of steep part, and this group starts coming down, and they're Polish and don't speak English. And they start coming down, and the guy, my guide in front of me is trying to tell him, you got to wait till we get up to the top of this part. And they just kept barreling down, and they're coming towards me, and they're clipping by mistake. They're clipping onto my rope instead of the rope to the mountain. And it was total cluster. And it was really the first time that I was like, somebody's going to die right now. Like, this should not be happening. And it really, and obviously I made it up, and it was all okay. But it was really the first time that it hit me how dangerous it is what I'm doing, like how many things could have gone wrong right there, even though I was attached to ropes. Just so many things could have gone wrong. They didn't.
Okay, thankfully. Wait. You just said that's the first time it ever occurred to you that climbing the 7 tallest mountains in the world, on the planet, was a dangerous thing to do.
I should say the first time I was really that scared, right. And I think that's different. I mean, I know it's dangerous and all that, but when you're in that kind of situation, you're like, holy cow, like this could go really bad really fast, so it's part of this is still difficult for me to describe it. Like, I almost need enough time away from doing it to like process what's happening to me through this in a really cool way. But, it's overwhelming a little bit. But we got up that ridge, and there was that little beautiful part, but it turns out that's a little piece of that whole thing. So that's all you see is the beautiful part. And of course, you're not taking pictures of any of that gnarliness, because the last thing you're doing is taking out your phone, Yeah. And then we got up to high camp, which is, you're above 17,000 feet. And it's just all these ice walls all over the place because the weather's so bad and the wind is so strong and it's so cold that you've got to have these walls of protection around your tent so your tent doesn't get, blown away. And we get there and we get camp set up, and I'm still feeling really good. And, at 8:00 at night, the weather forecast comes on through the Denali Park Service. So everybody stops talking. You can hear everybody in camp just get quiet. Everybody's listening to the weather. And the weather's talking about this storm that's coming in, and everybody's talking about, oh my God, we're going to be stuck up here. And I look at Colby, and he's like, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do in the morning. And I'm like, okay. And he's been up there 39 summits of Denali. I think it's the record probably. And he goes, we're going to wake up. I'm going to look up at the mountain and I'll tell you what we're going to do. I'm like, okay. So we did. And, 5:00 in the morning or whatever. And he's just sitting on the edge of the tent looking up at the summit. And I don't know what I'm looking. I mean, I know I'm looking at a summit, but I don't know what the clouds are doing and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, we're going. So get ready.
Jeez.
And so we went up and we were the only ones that left camp. We were the only ones up on that mountain. And we were about maybe only a half hour in. And my other guide, Cody, says, look up. And I looked up and there's this massive rainbow out of nowhere. And I knew we were going to make it to the top. And we were only at the beginning of summit day because I see these rainbows on summit days. It's really weird. And so we kept going and the winds started to pick up like really bad. And he's like, we'll keep going until we can't or give it a few more minutes. And then it just stopped. The wind just stopped and we're like alone up there and super hard, super steep. You really start to have difficulty breathing. You're up at 19,000 feet. And then we got to about an hour from the summit. So it's so funny because you can see the top and it looks like it's right there, but it's not. It's like
yes, of course.
It looks like it's right there. And I remember Colby saying to me, just remember we're only halfway. I'm like, what do you mean? The summit's right there. He's like, no, just don't forget we got to get down. I'm like, yeah, duh. Like I know that. But he could see that I was starting to slow down. And, we're at 20,000 feet at that point. And I got to the summit and we were only up there for about 3 minutes. And I was not, I had altitude sickness pretty bad, just like I did on Aconcagua. And I had to, I was okay to walk down, but it was super, super slow. I was in a lot of pain. I was having trouble with my balance and I just couldn't walk fast. So, thankfully ended up okay and got back down to high camp and all was good. But yeah, it's just a whole nother world up there when you get to that kind of altitude, with not just having no idea what your body's going to do when you get there.
All right. So now we understand why you're having trouble getting your head back together again. I mean,
yeah.
You had a difficult climb. You had some altitude sickness. You had some Polish people that nearly knocked you off the mountain.
Yeah.
So this is a lot of mini adventures wrapped up in this one big adventure. So I can understand how it's now you're back down on solid ground and you're back into the swing of things, but you're really not. It takes a while to decompress on these things, I'm sure.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, it's I have to keep remembering that just I'm still tired, and thank God I have a great coach because I'm training now almost every day, but it's minimal. It's, it's nothing like I was before just to kind of get myself moving. But it's emotionally, physically, all of it, just still trying to wrap my head around the fact that I did it. Like that was the hardest thing I've ever done,
Yes.
And the most amazing thing, I mean, outside of having my children and all those things, but that's hands down, that's the hardest climb I've ever done and the most rewarding too, and I think me not being able to summit it last year just made it even that much better. Because I really learned last year, like that all of my plans, I have this whole thing packaged up in this nice box with a bow on top in terms of how this is going to go, and fit into my timeline and the rest of my life. And the mountain's in charge of that. You know what I mean? Like I can make all the plans I want. And it can just go out the window, which I think is also part of the draw to me of all the unknowns.
And you never really, I mean, I think it's striking the way that you put it, which is that you don't know when you get up in these extreme conditions how your body will react. People who are in incredible shape and did all the right things and trained and are ready in every other way. Lots of things, their bodies can decide to do things that they don't anticipate. I mean, that's a part of it. In some ways, that's a part of it that's really, I don't know, freakishly frightening to me, among other things, but just that you just don't know what your body's going to do.
Well, and you can't base it on what your body's done before when you were at that altitude. Yep. Like you can't say, okay, well, I did this and I got to and I was fine. Like that's the piece I don't understand. But I mean, they had to give me dexamethasone, that high altitude drug, and they thought I had HACE, which is cerebral edema, and based on the way I was walking, and I didn't have that because if you take the dexamethasone and you don't have anything changed, that means you didn't have it, So it was just a matter of me getting down. So it was just AMS, altitude sickness. But yeah, it's really, and that was the other thing that hit me. Like, and you're up there, no helicopters, nobody can come save you. Like you're kind of screwed. Excuse my language. It goes really fast, and it's really difficult for people to get you down, too. So it's pretty serious when you get up that high. But I won't have to get that high again without oxygen. So the next time I'm at that altitude, I'll have oxygen on. So that's supposed to be a lot better. I've never been on oxygen, so I don't know, but.
So there you go. Speaking of which, now you have 2 more mountains to climb before you've done the 7. What is your next mountain?
Next is Karsten's Pyramid, which is in Indonesia. And so there's 2 7 summits lists. I don't know if we talked about this before. There's the base, this guy Base and this guy Messner, and they each came up with their own version. And one of them is the 7 summit is Mount Kusiko in Australia. And the other guy came along and said, no, the highest summit on Oceania continent is Karsten's Pyramid. So there's 2 lists. So you can do either one. Most people do both. Australia is just a little like walk up a hill, like nothing. Indonesia is a decent sized peak and technical and rock climbing and that kind of stuff. So, and that mountain's been closed for 3 years because of COVID. And the ropes have not been fixed. So they are supposed to be in the process now of fixing those ropes, and the mountain will open. So people are planning trips. And so I got it figured out to leave October 17th and go climb that. And, we'll see how that goes. Getting to that one is the biggest deal. And you trek through the jungle, which I won't. I'll just fly into base camp and do that one. So that one's next. And then hopefully Everest. That's plan A right now is Everest. I leave at the end of March. It's all signed up and I'm booked. And a lot of other things in my life need to be lined up for that to work,
Sure.
So I'm taking it kind of a day at a time, but that's been my attitude with all of this is just plan the next one. And then if it works, it works. If it doesn't, and I have to pivot and move it, that's what I have to do, so it's worked out so far.
So let me get this straight. You have a choice between a peak where they haven't changed or they haven't reinforced the ropes in 3 years because of COVID. And it's a rock climbing experience and it's a pretty dense jungle below, or a walk up the side of a hill in Australia, and you pick the rock climbing one, the harder one, right?
I did. Initially, I was going to do Australia. Then I just, I want to do that one. I'd like to do that one with my kids and my husband when I get done with the rest of them. But, again, there's only a certain window with Australia that you can do that one. And yeah, I know it's kind of crazy, but the more I've gotten into this, the more people that I talk to, it's like, it's just another experience, it's another really cool experience to have. So
yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just another experience. Yeah. Just, check them off the list, this mountain, that mountain. Okay. Sure-footed as a mountain goat, leaping from crag to crag, right, Don? I mean, my goodness.
Yeah.
It's just, with the lead up to Everest, and my coach assures me I'm going to be fine because you really start to question. People think when you get back from one of these, you'd be in the best shape of your life. And actually, it's the opposite. You're in the worst shape because you're so depleted from the climb and the environment and all of the things. So I've been like super weak, but the fitness is all still in me, and I'm being promised that it's going to come back quickly. But I have to trust that because I sure don't feel like that right now. But that's to get my head in the game for Everest and what the training will look like. I won't have to carry a heavy pack on Everest. I'll have Sherpa to do that. I won't have to set up my own tent. I won't have to drag a sled. So I think that's why they say it's not as hard as Everest, because you don't have that weight component, which is that's the killer on Denali. I mean, it's just a game changer when you're carrying 100 pounds versus a 15-pound pack. I mean, it's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
So, but Everest has all of its own challenges. It's a 2-month expedition. It's you're on oxygen. A lot of things can go wrong up there. You have to pass dead bodies. I mean, it's crazy. Like it's really it's dangerous, just like they all are, and it just in a different way. So
right, no one's coming to clean the mountain up.
Wow. It's not. Hey, the guy up there they call him Green Boots, and he died up there a long time ago. If you Google Green Boots, you'll see him on the internet. And he has green mountain boots, and he died up there, and he's like kind of right on the path. And you I guess when you see green boots, you're close to the summit, but
Oh,
warp is like, God, it's scary. It's been, I've got a lot of fear around it. I've got a fear a lot around can I actually climb Mount Everest, and can I get to the top, and do I have what it takes mentally? And I'm going through all those questions right now in my head. I think are good to have, and it's probably better to go into this that way versus I got this, no problem. That's not where I am. And I think it's healthy.
I've questioned your mental health several times during this conversations, but if you didn't have some level of fear going into Everest, I would really be worried about you. You know what I mean? It makes sense that you'd be. I mean, just the word Everest, when you first said it, I felt the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. Everest, and we're all three talking about climbing Everest, yo. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, that's where airplanes fly. I mean, that's how high it is.
Yeah. Now, on the other hand, though, I have seen pictures of Everest from a few years ago, before the pandemic, where they had lines of people stretching up, one of these ridges, tethered together, maybe 15 or 20 people. It looked like. The implication was that Everest had become like a tourist attraction. But that's you're not that's not something that you're faced with, right?
It could be. The thing with Everest is last year it was a lot better because it's all about the weather, and there's a 2-week window in May where all the summits happen. And it's just a matter of where in those 2 weeks is the weather going to be best. And everybody's trying to figure out what their summit day is. And the problem a couple of years ago is there was only 2 days of a weather window where it was even possible to get up there. And so everybody went for it at the same time versus, teams kind of spreading out on different summit windows. That was one of the problems. And that's deadly, and that's terrifying to me because you run out of oxygen and you're in that conga line, you could die very easily. I mean, that's why they call it the death zone. You can't live. Your body is not able to live in that kind of altitude without oxygen. I mean, there's people that do it without oxygen. I don't understand that. That's kind of becoming a thing of summiting these high peaks without oxygen, which I have no interest in that. But it's, it's super dangerous. And then the other piece is the tour operators. A lot of them are not based in the United States, but they're, people are coming up with less expensive ways to climb Everest, and people, jump on that train and they'll accept people maybe that aren't trained, well enough to go to Everest to try it. And there's people up there that don't know what they're doing and shouldn't be up there, and they slow everything down. So you get in a line behind a team of people or even one person that is going super slow because they shouldn't be up there to begin with, and you can't get around them and you're stuck, So I think they're trying to make some improvements, the government, in putting more rules into place around who can climb Everest and how many permits are issued and all that kind of stuff. But it's been a controversy for sure for the last few years. Yeah.
Now, one of the other things that we have to point out is that you're not climbing alone in a very real sense, and that is that every one of your climbs has, excuse me, there we go. Let me try that again. Every one of your climb.
Don is obviously at too great a height at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
sitting in his chair. Yeah,
I'm doing this show without oxygen.
Yeah.
You are doing these climbs for a foundation, for a purpose. That there's money being donated for every mountain you climb that goes to a good cause. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I'm a Miracle-Ear franchise owner, so I have offices throughout Pennsylvania. And one of the arms of the company is called the Miracle-Ear Foundation. And so it's a nonprofit organization, and we give free hearing aids to adults and children who can't afford them. So we do fundraisers all the time, and all of my offices participate in doing these fittings. And nobody's getting paid for any of that, obviously. And we do it because we have such a passion for it. The whole team does. Nobody comes on the team that isn't on board with this idea of giving back in each community. And so I started, before I did the first one, Kilimanjaro, I started Summit for Sound, and just decided I'm going to see if I can raise any money, because the foundation we can't give free hearing aids away unless we have money coming in to fund all that, obviously. And, raised money. And so I haven't done every one of them as a fundraiser, but most of them I have. So Denali was number 5. And I did the big fundraiser last year for Denali, and, had the Summit banner and the whole 9, but only was able to hold it up at like Camp 2. And raised over $150,000 total so far, which will help hundreds of families in Pennsylvania get free hearing aids that otherwise they couldn't, they would go through their life without being able to hear and communicate, which is, really devastating. So yeah, it's been a good marriage. It's been good to create more awareness about hearing loss and about what we do. And that, our goal as a company is anybody who comes in for help, we want them to leave with help, whether they can afford to buy hearing aids or not. And so it's really kind of taken off in a really good way. Yeah.
That's great. And if somebody wants to, are you doing either of these next 2 climbs as part of your as part of the Summits for Sound?
Everest for sure. I'm not sure about Karsten's yet, because that just came about in the last week. But Everest for sure. I'll do a huge one for that. And it's Summit for Sound. If you just Google Summit for Sound, you'll see it when the campaign is live. But any other time, it's miracleearfoundation.org. And you can log on to that site anytime to get information on offices close by that participate, which around Central PA is all of mine. And you fill out an application, and what the process is pretty simple. And but all the information is on there. And then once I decide to do the fundraiser for sure for Everest, I'll have a separate website for that.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds great.
Terrific.
One last question, and I've seen some pictures on your Facebook page of you and your youngest son doing a training climb. Are your kids getting into this?
Well, Jacob, my oldest, he's now 18. He just graduated from high school, and we're sending him off to college in 5 weeks. I know. It's for he's going to NYU for music business. So
very nice. Very nice.
Guys at one point. Yeah. He did Mount Fuji with me back in 2016 before I even knew what the 7 Summits was. And I thought he was going to get into it, but he just definitely didn't. But we're leaving next week for the 4 of us as a family to go do Machu Picchu in Peru. Right. And so my youngest now we went out and got him boots and all this stuff because he hasn't really been into it. And he went out with me last weekend, and went up Hawk a couple times, and he's going out with me this weekend, and we'll see. He's all excited about Peru, and he's talking about Kilimanjaro. So, we'll see. Talking about it and dreaming it is one thing, but doing the work is a whole other thing. So I hope he gets into it. I'm not pushing him though. I would go do any of them again, but with either one of them. But we'll see. But it's exciting that it was great to have him up there with me. It was really the first time that we were up there together, and just it's just cool to experience it through a kid's eyes. It's like, God, this is hard, Mom.
Yeah, I can imagine in a couple of years, I can imagine them sitting around with their kids at the mall or something and saying, man, my mom makes me climb mountains, How?
Julie, it's always great to talk to you. It's always interesting to hear all of the crap that you have to go through to get to the top of these mountains.
Yeah, really? Thanks. I'm glad you're interested in all the details around it. I hope it wasn't too much information, but I'm figuring this out as I go, and I'm glad that there's some interest and hopefully it'll help with spreading the word about the foundation and what we do. So
yeah, hopefully, and again, I also have to say, aside from the crap that you have to go through, I've seen the pictures that you post from the summits, and it does look like peaceful and gorgeous and life affirming, I would say.
It really is. It's when I feel like I'm the best version of myself when I'm out there. I'm the most calm. I'm the most at peace and calm, and it's a pretty awesome thing. If I could figure out how to take that feeling and have that be how I am every day in the stress of life, that would be great. Maybe by the end of this, I will figure that out. But yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Thanks very much for talking with us, Julie, and good luck on the next couple of climbs. We'll catch you after one or both of those and see how you're doing then.
Sounds good. Thanks.
And thank you for listening to the Musical Innertube.
The Musical Innertube is available everywhere good podcasts are found. Listen on your favorite platform and give us a good rating.
You can subscribe to the podcast on our website, musicalinnertube.com.
There you can listen to all of our podcasts, see pictures and biographies of our guests, and contact us. You can even leave us a voicemail.
And don't forget to leave your email address on our Talk to the Two page on the website, and we'll send you a preview of who's coming to talk with us by email, just so you're prepared.
That's musicalinnertube.com.
And as always, thanks to virtual band Car Radio Dog for our theme music.